Welcome back to the Blockchain Sessions. I'm here with Dan Ostrovsky from NFID Labs. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about NFID Labs. What sparked your interest of getting into wallets first? Like it's the foundational layer of Web3, right?
Yeah. Foundational layer of Web3 really is the interesting part about wallets. And maybe I can give you a bit of a lay of the land on how I got into Web3. I think that ends up being really important to the story. So it was, 17, 18, and I got really curious about what Bitcoin was, primarily because everybody around me was talking about it. Then they started talking about ETH and all these tokens. And I thought, well, what the heck? Like, what is all this stuff? And I was frustrated with myself for not being able to understand it and then articulate it back to other people who were asking me, because I worked in tech. I started a couple marketing companies, a mobile ad network, a marketing aggregation company. So non-tech people would come to me and ask me for tech advice, tech help, and I couldn't answer them about all this crypto stuff. So that was frustrating. And I dove in, I wrote the Bitcoin blockchain, I deployed it locally just to understand, start to finish, what does it do? It's pretty dumb. Like, it doesn't do much. But the fact that it does this one thing really well, which is keep a ledger, maintain a ledger without any central authority. And that was just absolutely pure magic. And that was very special. That was a very special moment for me. And I thought, okay, crypto is really cool. Then I got into ETH because of smart contracts, started to understand what that was. That was just adding some flexibility in this layer. And allowing other developers to really build other things. And at that point, people had started to build tokens. ERC20 tokens were popular, 721 tokens, NFTs were popular. So I set up a wallet. Like most other people, I set up a MetaMask. Let's skip past all the complexity of doing that. As I said, come from tech. So downloading an application, having really good security hygiene, and saving my recovery phrase, all that I was fairly comfortable with. Obviously, now having secured more assets, it's a bit less comfortable because there's this single point of failure that I could really easily lose my assets, but we'll get to that. Anyway, started trading on DEXs, I bought ETH names, bought NFTs, and it was so interesting how I could do all these things without anyone's permission, and how other developers had just imagined this, created it out of thin air, and now it's mega popular, these tokens and NFTs and all these things, and different DeFi primitives. So I just really got bit by the bug. Then I kept trading, and as I got more comfortable, instead of using DEXs, I started swapping in my MetaMask. And that's when I started to notice that, well, actually, there are these centralized services that exist, and I'm not as well aware of them. But now that I am, I started to ask myself, should this even exist? How do I feel? Do I feel good or do I feel bad about it? And in particular, it was the in-wallet swap. So MetaMask takes a cut, like 0.875% of the swap goes to MetaMask. And you follow the money. It doesn't go to MetaMask. It goes to Consensus Software, Inc. And so I started to realize that all wallets are doing this. All wallets, on the one hand, giveth, on the other hand, taketh away. They give you user sovereignty, they purport to give you this sovereignty, but on the other hand, really they're incentivized to keep you in this wallet ecosystem so that you can trade within it and they can collect a fee. And all of this, that's their business model. That's the wallet business model. And it makes them an absolute killing. For Consensus Software, it's made them $300 million. For other companies, it's made them a lot of money. On the one hand, you could say that's great. It's a service that they offer, and you pay for the convenience of using that service. On the other hand, aren't we trying to decentralize centralized services? Isn't that the whole point of Web3? And then I started to wonder, on a more philosophical level, these wallets, what are they really? And I found that they're your identity in decentralized spaces. They're your gateway to opportunity. They're your tools for financial freedom. Should a gateway like that be governed by a centralized service? Is that really what we want to have happen? That just got me down this rabbit hole of wallets to the point where I couldn't stop thinking about them. There's more I can say, but at a high level, that's what got me fascinated about wallets and why I'm still fascinated by them today.
What was your shift of going from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Internet Computer where you started building on? And did you start somewhere else building first?
I started with a set of requirements. So I decided for myself that I want to build a wallet that is aligned with users. If Web3 wallets are to serve everyone, then I had this really visceral belief that in that case they should be governed by everyone too. So instead of, Consensus Software Inc. being the only organization that got to decide and approve code changes, that got to benefit from the revenue and ultimately decide what to do with the treasury, it felt like that part needs to be decentralized. So how do you build a decentralized consensus software incorporated? Ultimately, that's a DAO. So I started with that being the end goal, that being the mission, that I wanted to build Web3's most user-aligned wallet. What does that mean in practical terms? So it meant that Consensus Software Inc. approved all code changes. So how do you get the DAO to approve all code changes instead? All the revenue goes to Consensus Software Inc. How do you get the DAO to control all the revenue and treasury? You start to go down the line, and it basically means that you need to have a wallet, an entire wallet, the whole code base, governed by the DAO. And all code change approvals need to go through DAO consensus. There needs to be a vote on it. And that was my requirement. How do you actually build that? And if you go down the line, it ends up being that you have to build a wallet in the cloud in a decentralized way. You need to build a decentralized cloud wallet that is DAO controlled. So where can I do that? First of all, deploy an entire code base to a cloud. Obviously, you can't do that. You can't deploy it to Google. You can't deploy it to AWS. You can't deploy it to Microsoft. So where can you deploy an entire code base that ends up working? That was the first place that I started to look. And I went from, obviously, like you can't do that on Bitcoin. You can't really do that on ETH because they're sort of like those smart contracts are only backend. You can't serve assets from it. It's expensive. It's not practical. You go through all networks, and ICP at the time, it was pre-Genesis. And I started to look into it. They had made a lot of promises, like everything on chain. So that's what attracted me. And the more I dug into it, the more I saw, well, actually, this is probably the only place I can build this. It still remains to this day the only place I could build a wallet like that. And I chose ICP. I put together a quick demo on what it is I wanted to build, proof of concept. I showed that to Polychain and Tomahawk and some others. In fact, even when I saw the Genesis event, one of the videos of the Genesis event was Joachim Breitner showing and demoing internet identity. And that's the moment it clicked for me that, yes, I could build a wallet that's all on chain because there's internet identity, and it like kind of does that. It is basically a wallet, and like it gives out these wallet addresses. So I wanted to build something like that, but that was more aligned with sort of other Web3 principles that I had been accustomed to. And he also became an investor in us.
That's what brought you to the Internet Computer.
That's what brought me to the Internet Computer, and why I stayed. We raised money from all these different leaders and thinkers, investors in the space. I recruited a team from AWS, from the London Stock Exchange, a couple people that I'd worked with in the past, others who were in our network. Over the course of now 3.5 years, with a dozen people, built this wallet, and here we are today, over 150,000 users, trusting NFID Wallet with their assets and identities and on-chain activities.